Whoa, wonderful how things work. Okay, where are we? So, okay. So I'm going to speak for about half an hour on how we use Eiffel at Nasdaq. So first of all, I have two corporate slides just to give, because people don't really know what Nasdaq does. You might have an idea, so I'm just going to give you some highlights of what we actually do, and in particular what we do in this office. So these are not my slides, but I will try to speak about them anyway. So we are company first. We have been innovators for the past 30 years. We did the world's first electronic stock market. We're the first exchange to sell our technology to power other exchanges, which I will come back to. We have a first female president and CEO of the company, Adina. And we're also the first market operator to move our infrastructure to the cloud. So we have a lot of cloud focus for the recent years. And we are now out to partner with Amazon, for instance, AWS. But basically, we are divided into three divisions. We have anti-financial crime. So we do a lot when it comes to identify and prevent fraud and money laundering, including things like drug money, human trafficking, etc. Unfortunately, that's a growing business for us. Shouldn't be, but it is. Capital access. We try to give our investors the insights they need to invest the money, and also the companies are listed at us, including all the governance parts. And then we have market platforms where I and Dominica's work. So what do we do? Well, we operate 30-something exchanges in Europe and North America. These include equities and derivatives and whatnot. And we also sell software to something like 130 plus other exchanges around the world. So we actually sell software to our competitors, kind of. So it's an interesting market to be in. So it's basically about the company. Worldwide, we are about 6,500 employees, I think. 1,200 of them are in this office. So this is the biggest office that we have. And the reason that we have this very big office in Stockholm is that Nasdaq bought OMX in 2008-9 or something like that. So they basically brought on this office into the company. Okay. And this is actually powered by Eiffel. Good, right? So what are we doing with Eiffel? We're doing quite a lot of different things. You should recognize most of the things here. We have a lot of event generators. Some of these are from the common Eiffel universe. Some of these we have developed ourselves. So for instance, we have connections to at least 3 different build chains. We use Jenkins, GitLab, and TeamCity internally, depending on which office and where you are from. For all these, we have event generators that populates our Eiffel chain. And we also have a connection to our source code repository trees, like both Bitbucket and GitLab. So we get all the source code events from there. And we also have a Jira plugin, so we get all the Jira events. And all these are fed, of course, into the Eiffel chain. And then we have a couple of subscribers on there. So these are things that we have developed ourselves. So we have plugins both for checkmarks and Sonatype, which are third-party tools which generate security scores, etc., about our software that we need to get into the chain. And then we take all the data that we collect from the Eiffel chain, which is quite a lot, and put that into a small Postgres database. And the reason for having that Postgres database is that we have visualization tools, Power BI and Grafana, that reads Postgres much easier than can read the Eiffel chain. And we also have another consumer, which is our continuous product integration team, which tries to integrate all the different products. So this is a very brief overview. Of course, there are a lot of more details. So these are basically a list of all the different services that we're using, which is Eiffel specific. And again, some of these are invented here or developed here, and some of these are taken from the community. So for instance, we have 2 different TeamCity plugin, depending on the fact that TeamCity uses different plugin architecture. We have GitLab and Jenkins. We have a Postgres one. We have our own core application for Eiffel, where we kind of collect everything that's common to all the things that we use. And then we have a couple of other third-party ones like Bitbucket and GitLab and so on. Are there any questions on that?
Many.
Shoot.
So, do you have your own Jenkins plugin?
We're taking the one that we actually found on GitHub, and then we developed that, tweaked it a bit to fit into our infrastructure. Okay. I mean, it's very hard to take something that is common and something that is generalized, but we need to be a bit more specific about the events. So we have tweaked it a bit to fit into our universe.
The maintainer of that plugin is very friendly, so,
yeah.
So you might want to talk to him and see if we can incorporate your.
We could definitely. The thing is that some of the changes we have done might be a bit Nasdaq specific, depending on the way we use our tools. It's the same thing like Access. I mean, great visualization, but it might be hard to tweak for the generic use and vice versa. But definitely, sure.
And the Bitbucket and maybe some other, GitHub. How do you, are you building the Git DAGs with Eiffel, or how do they work? What kind of Eiffel representation do you have of your source code?
We get all the source code commit events and consolidation events are generated from there. So composition events. Right, sorry, composition events, both from GitLab and Bitbucket.
Are you connecting those events with? I mean, do you have previous version links?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we do. We have links to everything. So that is normally I would say that the commit is more or less the first event in the chain. It depends on. We have also the Jira events. And since the thing is that we don't have that stringent process everywhere in the company. So some organizations use Jira for requirements, and that is a very good start. Some don't. So it depends a bit on where the chain starts, depending on which product you look at. But at least try to get all the events that are possible for us to get into the chain.
Are you happy with the source code events as they are defined now in the protocol?
As far as I know, yes, we are. Dominika, do you have any comments?
I can't think of any issues with it.
Okay, that's perfect.
Yeah, you see.
So Axis can think of multiple.
Yes.
Okay.
We have many opinions of the source code events.
We can discuss that.
Yes. Yeah. And Jira, how do you get those events?
We have a Jira plugin, so we get notification every time the status change or etc.
There was a very old Jira plugin. I think it still exists in the community, but it's not maintained. I don't think that you're the ones behind that plugin. Nope. Have you considered contributing your part?
That's definitely an option. Yeah. So we can discuss that.
In Eiffel Grafana, do you have a Grafana plugin, or is it just that you use Eiffel with Grafana?
I think
it's more like a dashboard to just query things in the databases.
Right.
Yeah,
gotcha.
So going back to this page, what I'm going to show you a bit is how we use this, what kind of data we get out of it, and our kind of visualizations. So starting with something that we call a quality monitor. This is a table. Tying back to the previous discussion. So Power BI, so QMon, Quality Mon is basically a Power BI application. And more or less all the data you see here is collected from the Eiffel chain, some way or the other. And the thing is, as I said earlier, we added some extra connections to the Eiffel chain, like checkmark, Zona type, Zona cube, etc. And from this, we collect extra data or statistics about the code that we inject into this table. So for instance, we have things here that are directly taken from the Eiffel chain, like feedback loop, which is basically how long time it takes after you do a commit until you have build done. So that should be pretty short, and we take that from the Eiffel statistics. Then we have other things like defect density, defect points that we take from the Jira plugin that we have in Eiffel. And likewise, security score, code score setup, and some other, and automation code coverage is taken from the SuniaQ plugin that we also inject and incorporate and aggregate with the Eiffel data. So the intention of this basically is to get as low as possible quality risk here. So the intended consumer of this is basically the release manager. And all this data is collected automatically. So you shouldn't need to do any manual intervention to get any of these data items up here. We do have a very similar approach to setting the, as Axel said, with your little web page for setting CL levels manually. We have a very much the same approach here, very similarly GUI.
You also call it a shaker?
We don't call it the shaker, no. But that might be something that we might steal from you because yes. I really like that. So this is automatically populated and updated more or less in real time, at least when it comes to the statistics. The Power BI application is not updated more than 3 times per day, but that doesn't really matter. Underlying data is here. It's get updated in real time. Yes, questions? No questions. We also have, I'm going to show 3 different pages from our Power BI application. This is the next one, which is a defect report. So this is actually on Eiffel, our Eiffel implementation, all the different plugins that we have, because we also, of course, also part of our quality framework. So we need to adhere to everything. So here I can see the connection that we have to Jira. So here we can, it's also injected into the Eiffel data. So here we can dig down into the Eiffel project and see all the different components where we might have issues. And then we have a list of all the different issues from Jira, which is quite useful when you're trying to find hotspots, for instance. Sometimes it can be hard on a project level to see where you have your issues. So this helps quite a lot to try to dig down into that. And finally, we also have one tab for the information security toll gates that we have. And this is also filtered on Eiffel. So here you see all the different Eiffel, at least the latest check-ins, commits to Git, and there's different statuses. So in this case, what we need to fulfill is that we shouldn't have any high or critical check marks and zone type vulnerabilities. If we have that build will fail and needs to be fixed before it can proceed into the chain. And this is good because this, of course, gives an overview of this, of all the different InfoSec toll gates on one page for the different products. Okay, so that's the visualization level we have in Power BI. Okay, so when it comes to the confidence level, this is how we have implemented it here. So basically, we are using 9 different confidence levels when it comes to testing, starting from what you do on your feature branch all the way down to a final system test. And then we've added another set of confidence levels, which are InfoSec related, which is in a parallel chain. So the difference here, of course, it's a normal confidence level chain is sequential. So you have to pass CL0 before you go to CL1 and so on, all the way down. When it comes to InfoSec, you need to pass it some time before we do the final system test or no software's acceptance readiness review. And you can do this in any order, but you need to have done it once. So what we basically done is we taken the confidence level modified event and created a new InfoSec modified event just to distinguish them in the Eiffel chain. And then we are using that internally for the InfoSec related events. So another way of looking at this is this view. So you have the code commit, customer delivery. So you have the normal confidence level chain down here, where you pass from 0 to 8. And then you have the InfoSec events that are done sometime on that specific commit before you can do your customer delivery. So one thing to note here, of course, is that the first CL levels here are for the product domains, the product teams, to make sure they pass. And they are passed once. This is when you build and run basically static analysis on a product, and you do that once. Then you come into integration testing. And this can be done or repeated in several different contexts. So one single artifact can have any number of confidence levels at the same time, depending on the context you put on that. Okay? I may come back to that and dig a bit deeper into that as well. So another way of looking at this is to look at the flow on, when it comes to confidence level. So basically, we have product features that are going to be developed into a product. And here you go from CL level 1 to 4. And 1 is basically you can build it. And for that, you have some kind of integration tests that passes. But this is on the product level. Next level is you go to product suite. Because a product can, sometimes a product suite can contain multiple products, and sometimes a product suite just contains one product. It's somewhat dependent on products. And from there on, you go to the standard solution, which I will speak more about in the next slide, which is our continuous product integration context. And here the thing is that when you come here, you integrate the product with several other products, and that context can vary very much. So that's the reason we have different, one artifact can have several different confidence levels attached to it at the same time, okay?
So you don't build artifacts.
We build artifacts here.
Integration levels, you don't build new artifacts.
No.
I mean, the product suite is not an artifact.
That's
the standard solution is not an artifact.
No, these are artifacts, and then we just
What
put
are
them.
they then?
They are combinations of artifacts.
Yeah,
we don't build them, we put them together.
Yeah, but they are somehow a composition of something.
It's a composition of artifacts.
Do you version them? Do you package them?
Yes, we version them and package them, but the underlying artifact is produced here. I mean, the binary that we install.
Binary, yes. Yeah. But I would argue that those are also artifacts.
You could argue that,
versions.
But they are not owned by the product teams as such.
No.
So that's the distinction here.
Yeah, but I guess you perform the tests on those combined
Yes.
artifacts.
Yes.
So it's actually, I would argue, the combination of artifacts that you set the confidence levels on.
Yes.
Individual binaries, actually.
It is, but that binary also have that tag attached to it. Yes.
We do the same, but I don't like it.
Well, we have to do it somehow. It can be a bit hard to track. So anyway, it comes to continuous product integration. I guess everyone knows what that is. I won't speak that much about it, but this might be interesting how we do it. So basically, the product teams, they're responsible for build chains. And from this, we get a lot of Eiffel data out of this. So when they have passed all the way up in our context to CL6, we send them to the continuous product integration process, where you take this artifact that is produced here and put it into some kind of customer environment together with a lot of different artifacts. Okay. And one of these customer environments, integration test environment, can, for instance, in this case contain 10 different product families, which runs on, in this case, 10 different servers. So each one of these product integration environment can be any number of combination of products and servers. Okay. So I think this is one example for customer, and I think you can scale this to like hundreds of servers. And that can also be a product integration environment. So the context here is extremely important for us. And the process which runs here, of course, that you stop the system, you upgrade it, you start it, you run some kind of health check, and then you test until you're done with testing in that kind of integration environment. So in order to keep track of that then, we test this, and then we tag everything with different CL levels that are augmented with the name of the customer, the bucket, and the name of a test environment. And these are the tags that we use for identifying what is the maturity of the product and product combinations, and how ready are these to be shipped and delivered to a customer. And I guess you guys are doing something similar in your different context. And of course, this should be as automated as possible, but we still have that little backdoor so you can set confidence level manually if you so wishes, if you have tests that you know, okay, I know why they are failing and so on. Okay. Questions, comments? Everybody recognized something similar in their own environment, I hope. So the next step that we are looking into is basically adding the CI/CD DORA metrics. I mean, how are we going to, we want to measure the time to deployment, for instance. How should we do that using Eiffel in an efficient way? And how do we define, that's also another thing. There's one thing to have the event, the other thing, how do we define deployment? Because it's not always we that deploy things. But the same thing when it comes to change lead time and the other DORA metrics, they're quite interesting to take a look like, since they're more or less becoming standardized way of measuring things. And we also need to take a look at our own infrastructure and operation and do a tune-up on how we have on our Eiffel infrastructure and improve that a bit. So those are the two big things next on our agenda, I would say.
Do you intend to do those things yourselves or open source or transparent?
I mean,
the DORA metrics, for example, is a very common thing.
It is a very common thing, but I'm looking forward to the talks we have about CD events and etc. and see what can be. I'm certain that quite a lot of work is done already. Should be. I hope it is. Yeah. Let's live on hope for a bit. So basically the next big things, and of course there will always be things like we are changing or incorporating a new build chain solution or whatever. So we might need to write new plugins and whatnot.
How many developers do you have developing these plugins and modules?
Currently, I would say we have about half, or even less. I mean, we did quite a lot of larger investment about a year ago and 2 years ago when we started our Eiffel journey. And then I think we, on average, had 2 developers working on the different Eiffel plugin. But now we are going more into maintenance mode when it comes to Eiffel. We don't have that much new development, so maybe it's half a resource or even less. I think it's even less actually that actively works on Eiffel. There are not that much right now that we need to do if we put this aside. Everything is there, it works pretty well. We probably should upgrade some of the components sometime, but that's just normal maintenance work. So we don't do that much new development right now.
Was it a hard journey to bring teams on board who are just very happy with their own tooling and the task and convincing them to use?
It's a mix of both. Every team have this notion that they are doing things in their own way and they need to do that for whatever specific reasons they have. But when you press them a bit, you see that there are a lot of commonalities and they should be able to use the same common process, etc. One thing that we did quite early was that this quality risk index here is part of our incentive programs. So you need to fulfill a certain quality risk level, and otherwise you need to improve that constantly. If you don't, you will lose your incentive money. And that's quite a powerful way of getting things done. So that helped a lot. Then you have to remember that a lot of the thing is, since we support 3 different builds and 3 different build setups, we don't really care what you use. We don't really care what kind of process you use, because as long as you use these build tools, the plugins are there and they will report the events. What you need to do as a team is tell them, okay, now I've done my CL2 testing, so you need to call that specific plugin. But that's not a major task for you, a major burden for you to implement, as long as you fulfill what we mean by CL2, for instance, or CL3. So it's not that really big change when it comes to the process, since all these plugins are running in the background and collects most of the events that we're interested in. The major task had been to make sure that people know what they need to do to improve these numbers, more or less. And also when it comes to collecting data points from Gyra, which is quite important since we have these defect points and defect density, since some projects use a different Gyra process, that has been a real hurdle for us. How do you measure this? Because we don't have different Gyra templates, for instance. So that has been more of an issue actually than just adding Eiffel.
And the Gyra event, you consider the subtask and the task hierarchy as well?
What we're looking there is basically stories and bugs, because those are the things that we're interested in. In particular in this, it's bugs. Is it a bug, yes or no? What kind of severity has it? Because that will impact the points here. And then we see the trends on that. And when it comes to all the data collected, for instance, from Sonia Cube, which is quite nice as well. We also have InfoSec governance that helps us, because everyone needs to implement that according to our own rules and regulations. Also when it comes to Sonia and check notes, for instance. So that helps a lot. So we're basically just collecting metrics from more or less existing systems and processes, more or less, which helps. Any other questions?
Are you happy with Eiffel?
Yes.
Basically, where are the biggest frustration points with Eiffel right now? What do we need to improve?
It's not that much that needs to improve. Maybe I have, I think, one bug report. That would be nice if it gets fixed. But other than that, we are quite happy with the general layout. I mean, we have made our own plugins and added the data metrics collection points where we have needed them. And I think the general layout of the messages with the links, etc., is pretty good and generic, so it can be used anywhere. I mean, we added our own events, like the InfoSec modified event, for instance. Yeah, I think it's a pretty stable product from our point of view.
And how open are you to actually donate some of these projects to the Eiffel community?
Absolutely. We can talk about the thing is, for instance, take something like the Eiffel TeamCity application or the plugin. That's the service side part of TeamCity, and that reports things like artifact created events. Fine. How do we get the data to know that it's an artifact created event out of a build system? That is not trivial, because there's nothing in the build system that tells you that you have created something. Same thing for GitLab and Jenkins, because you can have shell scripts that they run. How do the build system know what the shell script does, and so on and so on? Even if you have a Maven POM file or whatever, it's not obvious what is the artifact. So how do we do that? Well, internally, we're using Atlassian Artifactory for storing all artifacts in. So what we do here, we parse the log files to see where do we have something that tells you that you upload something to Artifactory. Okay, that's an artifact, and then we can take all the data out from that. But that's how we do it. That will not work for someone else that runs TeamCity and use Nexus, for instance, or use some other kind of artifact storage. So yes, sure, we can discuss it, but the thing is, most of these are coded into how our environments look and how our infrastructure works together. But sure. I mean, it's the same thing like the Bitbucket plugin, which is very good when it comes to reporting events to all the source code change events. And that also is dependent on that we have certain hooks in Bitbucket that are enabled. If you don't have them, and it's up to you to enable the hooks, because you have probably different plugins that you use in Bitbucket, then it will not work, and so on, so on, so on. So there are a lot of dependencies. It would be really, really nice, for instance, if all the build server applications were more common when it comes to APIs and the kind of data you generate, but as you know, they don't. They are very different plugin architecture. So these three plugins, they are more or less nothing in common except from the kind of metrics they do produce. And even that is not 100% unified either. But yes, we're always open to suggestions when it comes to that. We can take a look at that.
So how do you actually generate those events in all those different plugins? I mean, they're all, or some of them are in different languages, and some might be using the same language. Do you have some common SDK or something internally, or do you have individual JSON formatters for each of these plugins?
No,
That actually forms the events.
actually, all the JSON stuff, etc., is in our Eiffel core, where we collected them. Yeah.
You have one common.
We have one common where we share things like MQ connection data and all those kind of things that you need in order to send event, because we're using RabbitMQ, for instance. So we have a common place for that. But then apart from that, I think all of these are actually Java based, which helps. I don't think we have anything else in Java in this.
GitLab is Ruby.
We actually have a Java plugin for GitLab.
It's not really a plugin, it's more like a service running outside, because we couldn't take all of the information that we wanted from GitLab,
there was some issues.
So we have hooks enabled that follow our service, and then it gathers up everything together.
I mean, as I said, the build servers are, as you know, very individual when it comes to architecture and plugin capabilities.
I was just going to ask before Tobias did, how you extract information about artifacts.
Yeah,
that's one of the challenges.
It is
that we have, because I mean, it's you are free to do whatever you want in your CI system, but in the end, you just produce a bunch of files.
Yeah.
There's usually no tagging, no nothing. You have to figure out on your own which files belong together, what is the identity of the artifact, what is the version, and so on.
So that's, as I said, that's a perfect example of this. That is very specific code just to extract that kind of data. In this case, from the log files, and that works because we use the Artifactory plugin in TeamCity, for instance, and then it's easier to see the common denominator. But again, if you just produce files and upload into a shared drive somewhere, how does the build system know what happens? It doesn't. So that's an issue.
You talked about you created a new event.
The InfoSec modified the level event.
What is it that you're missing from the current?
Actually, it's nothing. What we wanted to make 100% sure that we don't mix events, like conference level events and InfoSec modified events. So we just took the event, copied the definition, and changed the name. They are identical, but it's a different name of the event in a JSON schema. That's it. So yes, we could easily have created a new conference level for InfoSec. No problem, but we don't want to mix them together. In particular, due to the fact that they are in different, they have different sequences. So we wanted a very clear separation between these and these. That's it. It would have worked, I'm sure, but. Yeah, anything else?
What type of event repository are you using? Are you using the one from Eiffel community?
Yes.
Or, the Docker thing?
Yeah, the Docker thingy.
Yeah,
exactly.
The source code none.
Yeah.
Repository.
Yeah, backed by MongoDB. Yeah.
And now that we have soon have a common definition of the API of an event repository, and we are trying to implement it in the Go event repository, Go ER. How would you be willing to just try it out to see where we are missing stuff and things like that?
Yeah, I don't see any issue with that.
Yeah, and giving us some feedback, because we are trying to make at least an open source version of the event repository.
Yeah, I mean, I can't promise you a deadline on that but we can definitely put that in the backlog.
I think that would help us a lot, right, find us.
Yeah, our Eiffel backlog right now is rather empty. As I said, we don't do that much work, so. Yeah.
We should talk to someone who knows things about the Ericsson-based event repository.
Yeah.
Because I think you have a different layout of your collections and so on. So Eiffel Goer makes some assumptions about the storage layout that might not necessarily work.
Okay. Oh yeah, by the way, I mentioned that we have Grafana as a front end. Thing is that I couldn't get a screenshot of that because that's currently down. We have a proxy issue. Has happened before. What we're using Grafana for is collecting metrics and statistics on the events, like more or less surveillance on the actual Eiffel chain. So basically, we check that we have the expected number of events each day and so on. So everything seems to be working. And we also have a couple of dashboards that are more product specific in Grafana than we have in Qmon, which is more higher level. So there I can see what kind of confidence level have my product reached lately and whatever. So I think in average, we generate like 20 or 30,000 Eiffel events per day, something like that. Tops around 50,000. Something like that.
And you use Eiffel Intelligence?
We use Eiffel Intelligence for setting up the subscriptions, yes. Which works pretty well, I would say. I haven't seen any issues yet, as far as I know, with that.
So we had that one performance issue.
Yeah, we have that. That's the bug. Yeah.
But we're not sure why it's happening.
No.
Still.
And we also discovered another performance issue actually in the Mongo database, but that was due to that we have written our queries incorrectly. So that's on us. Yeah.
Are you using any other form of aggregation of events? Or some kind of triggering? Because one of the challenges with the link-based model of Eiffel events is that you might get a trigger event.
Yeah.
But the trigger event itself doesn't contain all the information you need.
Yes. What we do is we have quite a few business rules implemented here in this application. That's our post Eiffel processing of the data before we store them into the Mongo, into our Postgres database.
Okay.
So what we do here, here is where we collect or aggregate everything together, both from checkmark, Sonatype, SonarQube, and Eiffel, to present the view that I showed you in our quality model, for instance. So there we have some business rules that takes care of those corner cases. We found that a bit hard to implement naturally in Eiffel chain as such. You need to have something else.
Yeah.
Add some business rules on top of those events. And then we also have some business rules in the Power BI GUI to present of the color in it, etc. That's a different. Yes.
Use any streaming framework for those subscriber implementations, or do you just write the code from scratch?
I think we wrote it from scratch, more or less. I mean, there was some RabbitMQ client, I guess. I mean, but. And of course, we have some kind of JSON parse, you know. But
yeah, TCP stack.
Yeah. Of course, we didn't write that, but Okay, I think that's about it. And I've actually taken more than 30 minutes. So.
Yeah, but that's fine. I mean, you have until lunch. It's 5 minutes left for lunch, so.
Yes.
It's fine. Do you have any wishes for the next 1.5 days here? That is not part of the agenda, or?
No, basically what it's the CD metrics, DORA metrics, if we could bring that, but that's already on the agenda.
Yeah, somehow.
And it would be quite interesting to see how you guys have implemented the infrastructure for Eiffel. I mean, more network hardware wise. How do you operate the systems and how do you use them in real life, architecture wise?
Sure. We haven't prepared anything such.
No, but we have asked me any session, so I guess I can answer.
At least Elena is able to make some levels of that works in Ericsson.
Well, I could probably make something on one quarter.
Yeah, that's good enough. Absolutely.
I mean, you either ask me anything or tomorrow We have an empty slot.
Yeah. That could be quite interesting to see your operation layout there.
Yeah, especially, I mean, you guys have, our infrastructure is very simple, so I can present it. It won't take more than a few minutes, but you,
Ours probably quite complex. with
Yes.
All the different domains that we use and everything.
yeah, I'm curious of why.
Why? Yeah.
Exactly.
I am as well, but no, I don't think that the decision makers are here in the room at all for that decision, so. Yeah. But maybe you have some opinions on why.
Okay, then I
So is it lunch then?
thank you for your attention,
Thank you.
Thank you.
and I will try to stop this recording.
Much appreciated.